Welcome back. I'm talking with longtime political activist, four-time candidate for president Ralph Nader in our first Conversations with Great Minds series. You have a lot of fans here, by the way. I voted for you in 2000. Sam works on our staff, voted for you in 2004. There's a lot of, I just have to say, it's a great honor to have you here with us.
If this keeps up, Tom, I'll have met all my voters.
Well, no, I have a feeling there's a lot more than you could ever possibly meet. Your book about the super rich saving us, when I first heard the title, I thought, this is satire. Ralph is writing satire, or or he's trying to make a, a satirical point. But you're actually serious. Talk about that.
Here's why I'm serious. First of all, it's a reaction to the situation of the people in this country going down in all sorts of ways economically. 80% of the American people think that America is in decline. That's an all-time record. So I said to myself, how can I describe the ways to turn the country around that reflect majority public sentiment and are long overdue? So you can't do that in nonfiction. It becomes like a wonkish 15-way points and all. So I did it as fiction. It's not a novel, though. It's what's called a work of political imagination by the literary people. And so I took 17 real-life, super-rich, older Americans, Warren Buffett, George Soros, William Gates Sr., Ted Turner, Yoko Ono, Phil Donahue, and others, and had them led by Warren Buffett after the Katrina fallout, when he was disgusted how the people were completely abandoned.
And he genuinely was.
Yeah, and he was, they were fleeing out of New Orleans, no food, shelter, water. And in the book, I had him take, out of his frustration, truckloads of supplies down, and he was passing them out, and a grandmother grabbed him and said, only the super rich can save us, because it was help. So that's where the title comes from. He then takes 16 of his super rich buddies that he selects very carefully to a mountaintop hotel in Maui, Hawaii, and they decide that in 1 year, with brilliant strategies, surprise moves, billions of dollars, and their own influence and mass media capabilities, they're going to take on the big boys, the big corporate boys in their political allies in Washington, with a whole set of long overdue reforms: living wage, universal health insurance. They start a clean elections party. They start a People's Chamber of Commerce. They organize every congressional district. They convert, push for the conversion to solar energy. The book is, as Leslie Stahl of 60 Minutes said, it's engrossing, creative, and funny. And I said, I'll take all three.
I found it to be all three,
Now, some people say, this is impossible. What are you talking about? Okay, here's the answer. One, the mega billionaires have already been doing it, only on the other side, like the Koch brothers and the Mellon interest.
Twice a year they're having these meetings. We just discovered it's been going on for some time.
And, I mean, they're
all the way back
pouring
to their father, with the John Birch Society.
So it's not unknown. Number two, historically, the anti-slavery movement was funded in significant part by proper Bostonians and New Yorkers, rich, in the 19th century. The modern civil rights movement.
Although, if I may, the story. We lived in Atlanta for a number of years. Our kids went through the Atlanta public schools, and they heard a completely different history of the anti-slavery movement than I learned growing up in Michigan. And what they learned was that it was the New York bankers trying to screw the Southern farmers, and that's why they were against slavery, and that's what the Civil War was all about. And actually, there's an element of truth to that.
There is, but when you see Frederick Douglass,
it wasn't entirely altruistic.
Frederick Douglass and the great leaders, they had to have expenses. They had to have, it costs money to abolish slavery if you're going to advocate for it. The modern civil rights movement, the major families, the Curry family, the Stern family in the early years put millions in. As we speak, Warren Buffett and 1,000 rich people are fighting against the abolition of the estate tax. They want to preserve the estate tax, even though they're wealthy. And of course, right now, William Gates Sr. is pressing for a November 2 referendum to increase taxes on the wealthy, including himself in the state of Washington.
We've had him and Chuck Collins as co-author on on my radio program.
So, there are. And some multimillionaires have funded the early peace movement, the so-called Pugwash Conference, to bring people together for nuclear disarmament or controlled nuclear arms. So why not? Now, it's quite interesting, about the time this book came out, Only the Super Rich Can Save Us, it's that Warren Buffett and Bill Gates Jr. are now on a global mission to sign up mega billionaires to give over half their wealth to good works.
Right.
Now, I had breakfast about a year ago with Warren Buffett, and he said, good works. Now we've got to figure out what good works are, right?
Oh.
All right. Now, this book has now been translated into Chinese. When Buffett and Gates went over a few days ago to China to meet with the Chinese billionaires, try to get them to sign up, the publisher rushed the copies of the Chinese translation of Only Super Rich Can Save Us to them. So, in other words, there's almost like a serendipity operating here.
Yeah.
And the key is to persuade these multi-billionaires, and they have a liberal, progressive background, many of them. They have their own hard edges, too. And they're in their 70s, 80s, 90s. They have a different perspective on life. It's persuade them to put more money from charity to justice. In other words, not just soup kitchens, but why is a country like the U.S. have millions of children hungry, you see, and adults? So justice it's called muscular philanthropy. And I think people are going to hear a lot more about that.
Well, I certainly hope to. So, speaking of transforming this country, I mean, you know, one of the, as we spoke in the last segment, one of the most powerful influences is government.
Yes.
And now we see in, for example, the Treasury Department, Elizabeth Warren, who many of us, you know, I know you respect her. I have tremendous respect for her. Have talked with her a couple of times. That she has this potentially position of power. But I'm reading in today's paper that the Treasury Department is leaking like nasty stuff about her, like she's having her office painted. And suddenly Politico is like, oh, she's a prima donna, she's having her office painted. That there's a turf war going on inside the Treasury Department. What are your thoughts on the direction that not just the Obama administration, but in general that our country's going? I know there's a lot of institutional people in these, you know, the Treasury Department has people who are in there from the Bush administration, from the Clinton administration, so on. Some of these institutions are bigger and more powerful, arguably, than a president.
Well, Elizabeth Warren's predicament reflects the lack of character and transformational leadership by Barack Obama. He knows he has one of the greatest communicators to American families in modern history with Elizabeth Warren, right where their bread and butter is. And instead of nominated her to head this new agency and having the confirmation hearings in the Senate before the midterm elections, where let the Republicans try to go after her and see where their fangs are. Instead of doing that, he's now letting her twist a bit. And he's letting Geithner doesn't like her, and he's the Secretary of Treasury. It's just awful what's going on. They have an absolute jewel of a person, the kind of person that should be in government, the kind of person knows how to devolve power, how to give people power directly. Very knowledgeable, Harvard law professor, right where Barack Obama studied. And he's back and forth, back and forth. That's the symbol, the pendulum syndrome of the Democratic Party. That's why they're going to lose significant number of seats on November 2. Because as Karl Rove himself said, you know, the Democratic Party hasn't made the best case it can in this election. This is from Karl Rove. Yeah. So people need more material, and if you don't mind, I want to give my Nader.org website for my weekly column. Anybody just sign on, they'll get it free through the email. Yeah. That's Nader.org.
Great. And this whole concept of the direction that it's going and how it's falling apart, the direction of the Obama administration. Do you think that, well, actually, two questions. Within the Republican Party, whatever the majority of the caucus believes is pretty much what the Republican Party does. The majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives, certainly, and actually in the Senate, if you listen, you know, wanted things like a public option. They wanted stronger fiscal reform. But there were these outliers in the Democratic Party who were able to bring them down. The Republican Party doesn't tolerate that. It's a weird conundrum, you know. It's the old Will Rogers joke. I don't belong to an organized political party. I'm a Democrat. Yeah. And in some ways, I think it's a strength for the Democratic Party. But it renders them politically ineffectual. Do you think, having been a third-party candidate, do you think that there's a third-party role in pushing things? I mean, historically, look at what Ross Perot did. I think he frankly woke America up to, you know, we fell back asleep, but he woke us up to the dangers of free trade. Do you see a third party coming out? Do you see a collapse of either party? Or do you think that they've so integrated into each other that we have this duopoly permanently entrenched? I mean, what in your crystal ball, what do you see?
The more the two
how do we make it work?
Yeah, the more the two parties blur each other, and the Democrats are very concessionary that way, the more people will be looking for a third force, political force. The independents now outnumber either registered Republicans or registered Democrats in America. That's the first time. So you're seeing this incipient rebellion in different ways. My guess, I think it's 50-50, Mayor Bloomberg is going to run. And if he runs, it'll be
for
as
president.
Yes. And if he runs, it'll be on the independent ticket.
As the billionaire.
Yeah, he writes himself a $600 million check, so he doesn't have to call and dial for dollars and make quid pro quo deals.
Well, it's not working for Meg Whitman.
No, but Bloomberg is extremely astute. He starts out with a big urban mayor base all over the country. Yeah. And he basically, I had a conversation with him. If he thinks he can win against the hereditary voters who automatically vote for Democrat, Republican because their grandparents did, if he thinks he can chip off enough of that and get the independent vote and win, my guess he's going to run in 2012.
Wow.
He's as disgusted as anyone else with what's going on.
And sort of like down in Florida with Charlie Crist, he'll be pulling votes from both sides.
Yeah, so the two-party duopoly, or dictatorship as I call it, his vulnerability is to a multi-billionaire, neither liberal nor conservative, but sort of goes down the so-called middle.
Yeah, and Bloomberg's been quite effective as the mayor of New York.
On tobacco is courageous. Look at trans fat. I mean, there's many sides to him.
I'm sorry.
There's just many sides to him. Yeah. But I think the two-party dictatorship and their phony debate commission, which excludes everyone else from reaching tens of millions of people, is going to meet a serious challenge, either in 2 years or 4 years.
But in the minute we have left, isn't this a concession that only the rich can govern us? And isn't that the antithesis of what the founders had in mind of the citizen politician?
Well, since justice requires substantial resources in mass media and community organizing, if you can find a tiny few enlightened multi-billionaires in their later years when they want to leave a legacy behind, you'll be surprised how fast this country could be turned around. People are hungry for these necessities that have been denied them, for access, for voice. You'd be surprised how fast. That's why I wrote the book. I showed in great detail how it could happen.
But you don't have some uncomfortableness, some discomfort with rule by billionaires.
No, basically it's good billionaires taking on bad billionaires. You see, I mean, we're already ruled by bad billionaires. Why not have a few going across the aisle, right?
Very, very well said. Ralph Nader, thanks so much for being with us tonight. Ralph Nader. And Nader.org?
Yes.
Nader.org, the website, and his book, Only the Rich Can Save Us, as you can see right here.